Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Million Dollar Body Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Nate, and today we're going to be talking all about abs, all things abs. So I want to cover three very common myths that we see a lot on social media, on magazines, on Instagram, all these things. I want to talk about how to actually get the abs you want, and then I want to talk about kind of the main piece that's going to help get you to that next level. So we're talking a lot about the exercise piece, but obviously we know nutrition is important. First and foremost, though, hypothetically, if I were trying to build a six-pack or reveal my six-pack, what would I do? Well, that would really depend on where I'm starting from. If I was starting from 20% body fat or more, the key here is going to be to lead down. So dialing in that nutrition first. We're going to talk a lot about that towards the end of this podcast, but that's going to be the big key is getting your body fat lower, close to that 15% mark. From there, you're actually going to be able to build muscle more effectively, and you're going to be able to reveal the abs that you have because, believe it or not, every single person has abs, has a glistening, chiseled, Greek god-looking six-pack. It just depends on whether you can see it or not based on how much body fat you have. And it's really important that we start thinking about abs and not in terms of like, oh, how do I grow my abs, but how do I reveal my abs? There's also going to be a distinction on making your abs more visible because yes, you do have a six-pack under there. Everyone does, but how can we reveal it more? So you can decrease your body fat, or you can actually make your abs a little bit thicker to be able to show them a little bit more. That's why on strongman competitors, these guys who are really, really massive, super strong, 300 plus pounds, you can still see their abs because they are gigantic. And even though they're pushing 20, 25% body fat, they are still so thick through the waist, and they're especially that six-pack area, they can see it no matter what. You can just see the outline. So first of all, let's talk about three different myths that we see all the time on Instagram, on Facebook. So for a while, this was a big thing, probably like 2010, 11. Everyone was talking about how crunches and sit-ups were going to destroy your spine. They were going to literally make you poop your spine out because if we do any sort of what's called spinal flexion, where we're bending right at the spine at all, that's going to basically make our spine just explode into a bunch of jelly, and our bones are going to just fall out of our butt, and it's going to be just this gnarly scenario if you do crunches at all. And the whole fitness world was freaking out about this, which is kind of crazy because we do spinal flexion all day, every day. We're in and out of our chairs, we're standing up, we're picking things up, and while it may not be the best and most biomechanically sound position, we still are going to be doing it. You can't have sex in completely neutral spine. So just let's talk about like real humans doing real stuff, living their real lives, because we're going to be in spinal flexion. So the fear of doing crunches and replacing them with more what they call quote unquote functional exercises like planks, side planks, and different anti-rotation, anti-flexion exercises, which was really, really in vogue about 8-10 years ago. And it's kind of permeated into our current thought process about how we should do our abs. So first things are, we still need to treat our abs like a muscle, just like anything else, just like our biceps, just like our chest, just like our shoulders. If we don't constantly use heavier weights, more overload, and actually give them a reason to grow, they're never going to get denser, thicker, or easier to see by doing sets of 60-second planks. So if you can do a 60-second plank, no problem. You probably need to move on to something a little bit more advanced. Just doing a plank is not going to get you the six-pack that you want. Because number one, you're not forcing that muscle through a full range of motion. You're not getting it to contract and release even the way you do through a crunch. And while I don't think crunches are the best exercise either, at least they're going to help that muscle contract and release so you get that stretch and that contraction every single rep. Whereas a plank is basically holding strong. Planks are awesome. Don't get me wrong. They're very, very important, especially if you have any sort of low back problems. If you have low back pain, then getting your planks rock solid, making sure that they don't hurt your back is a very important thing for you. And that's because planks train what's called the transverse abdominis, or TVA. It's a girdle type muscle that goes from like the below your rib cage all the way around your torso like a girdle and wraps it and locks it all in place. So that's why if you're like, think about bearing down, taking a dump, you're sitting on the toilet, you're like, and you can't quite tuck, but if you put your hands on your waist right now, you'll be able to feel that it's tight on all four quadrants. And I hope you did that. And I'm not the only one who's just checking that to see if I was tight front and back. So if you put your hands, if you take your hands like a pincer, and put it like right around your belly button, you should be able to feel it press out front on the belly button side and then on the back side as well. That's how you know your transverse is engaged. That's a great muscle to work, but it's not going to help us get a six-pack. And that's what we're talking about right now. Six-pack muscles are basically what's called the rectus abdominis. And you don't need to know that. I'm going to use some muscular terms and maybe get a little bit more biomechanical today. But you don't need to know any of this stuff. I just want to make sure that if you need the resources to build a six-pack, you have them here, okay? So the rectus abdominis, that six-pack muscle, and that's all in front. That's a front muscle. So when we're doing stuff to build our six-pack, think about doing crunches. Think about doing leg lifts, things that are in front. And that doesn't mean that side rotations and side planks and pile-off presses and cable chops and all sorts of things are not important. They're just not going to help you build the six-pack quite as well as some of these other ones, okay? A big myth that we hear a lot is that abs need 20 plus, 25, 50 reps of any exercise to grow. We see this a lot with crunches, a lot with sit-ups, and I'm not going to point any fingers, but CrossFit has really popularized the burn yourself out to death by doing insane numbers of reps on, whatever move. They don't care. They'll make you do 100 burpees. They don't give a shit. So anytime you're doing that high of a rep of count of things, you're not pushing yourself into a great muscle building zone. A lot of the times we think of a muscle building zone as being between 8 and 12 reps. And while that's not totally true, you can build muscle lower than 8 and you can definitely build muscle above 12. If you're pushing those boundaries all the time, you're not spending any time at all between that like 10-ish rep range, then you're not doing yourselves any favors. You're not making it any easier for you. So think about it. When you're doing ab exercises, can you do more than 20 reps? Can you do more than 30 reps? If so, you need to change up the ab exercise or add a weight that's going to make it progressively harder and easier to build muscle there, okay? So that's the first myth, is that you need to be doing more than 20 reps of any sort of ab exercise. So next time someone assigns you 30 reps of a leg lift or 20 reps of a crunch, or you're sitting there doing flutter kicks for 60 seconds, holding a plank, thinking that's going to build your six-pack, it's probably not. It's not going to be the best use of your time, okay? The next myth that we get a lot is that people will tell you, oh, do this exercise to remove stomach fat. Do this exercise to burn belly fat. And truthfully, this is going to be kind of bad news for everyone. You can't spot reduce fat based on exercise. Exercise is not going to allow you to burn fat in specific areas. The more crunches you do, it's not going to burn more of your abs. You're just going to get more frustrated as you see that stubborn belly fat sticking around on your lower abs, not moving. And guess what? Everyone hates where their fat sticks most. So if you're like, oh, I wish my fat would just wasn't on my thighs, belly, low back, whatever it is, guess what? Like someone else wishes they had that problem, and someone that wishes that theirs weren't the same. So you get what you get, and if you don't like it, then you can go be mad at your parents. But other than that, we just have to accept it and deal with it. And the best way to deal with it, rather than thinking about spot reduction of our belly fat by doing hundreds of crunches, leg lifts, abs, sit-ups, whatever else, we need to start thinking about global fat loss, because the more fat you can mobilize, you can get to start moving globally, the more fat you're going to be pulling from your that belly fat specifically. And when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about mostly it's called subcutaneous fat. In other podcasts, we've addressed that visceral fat, and we talk about that from a nutrition standpoint. That's very important. But the subcutaneous fat, that's the fat we grab on our stomach because we go, look how fat I am. I wish I could just lose this, and we pinch ourselves. That's subcutaneous fat under the skin. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about here, is getting rid of that level of fat. Because if you still have a ton of visceral fat around your stomach, then we need to start there. Like we said in the beginning, hypothetically, if we were above 20%, we would need to drop that body fat down to make ourselves more positioned to start building the muscle in the abdominals to reveal the six-pack, as well as revealing what we currently have. So we need to get that visceral fat down so we start focusing on the subcutaneous fat. Plus, less visceral fat equals being more healthy and having a little more longevity, avoiding illnesses. But we've talked about this. You already know. So the only thing that you can really pull from the whole I can't feel this area, it's not going down, I would love to spot reduce my abs, whatever, is the fact that if you can't feel that area being warm, if you put your back of your hand on your stomach, on your love handles, on your thighs, on your butt, whatever it is, and you feel that area is cold, you're not going to be removing any fat from that area, because fat loss follows blood flow. And if you don't have blood flow to an area, you're not going to be burning any fat there. Okay, well, how do you increase blood flow? There's a couple of ways. All right. Number one, warm up better. You're not warming up enough. You could probably triple your warm up time on like some sort of Stairmaster, rowing machine, VersaClimber, anything like that, especially you have extra weight to lose 20% plus as a man or 30% plus as a woman, then having a little bit more time on a cardio machine to warm up is going to be better for you than starting off with resistance training. It's going to get you feeling better. It's going to burn a little bit more fat. It's going to keep your heart rate elevated, which is going to make the workout more effective for total calorie burn. Okay. How else can we warm up? A lot of times wrestlers doing it, just wearing more clothes, wearing a sweatshirt, making sure that that area is going to get a little bit more heat. I hate to even bring this up. I really do. But it's one thing that you can do is put something around that area that's going to hold on to like a belly band or any sort of like, I don't want to say waist trainer. I really don't want to say waist trainer because it's not going to actually train your waist, but it will help keep that area warmer. That's the only thing it's good for. And just because I hate it, I hate saying that, it doesn't mean that science does not back that up. So I do want to include it, albeit begrudgingly, and I'll have you note that it is begrudgingly that I say that. And the last thing is making sure that you're hitting compound movements. So this is not just like, okay, I warmed up, now let's do some abs. No, get your ass over to the dumbbell rack and do some heavy rows. Do some chest presses, do some cleans, do some overhead presses, do some lunges, some squats, some things that are going to get your body moving and sweating and burning a lot of calories from a full body perspective. Don't just start with your abs. So compound movements, any movement that's going to use more than one joint is a compound movement, and anything that's harder is better. So if you want a hard exercise circuit right now, let me give it to you. 15 reps of a goblet squat, holding that in front of your chest, grabbing 2 dumbbells, and then going for a 100-foot farmer's walk. Do that for 10 rounds, and you tell me about your belly fat tomorrow, okay? All right, the next thing is that, let's see. So we talked about the 20 reps, that you don't need 20 reps to do this. Spot reduction is a lie, and planks suck. Those are our 3 myths that we talked about. Next thing is we need to be building the 2 tips I'm going to give you right now. We're going to be building our abs with heavier weights, heavier overload. So if you're doing 1,000,000 crunches on like a Swiss ball or on the ground, why don't you just add a heavy weight to that or add a bar so when you sit up, you can crunch that up, get some squeeze there in the abs, make sure you can feel it, and then release back down. Do that for sets of 10 to 12 rather than the 20 plus reps that you've been doing and see what kind of results you get there. Same thing with a leg lift. If you're doing it it's super easy, you're just doing it from the floor, add a ball between your legs, add some ankle weights, make sure it's a little bit more difficult. The best ab exercises in the world, according to Coach Nate Palmer, are toes to bar hanging. The second follow-up on that would be like lying leg lifts on the ground. Those are a little easier. Ab wheel rollouts and L sits. Those exercises are some of the most difficult and can train your body to really get the results that you're looking for, but they are very challenging. Okay, those are my specific ab exercises that I really think are effective. Okay, the second tip I'm going to give you right now is a tip that's I'm going to use a scientific term called antagonistic inhibition. A lot of people, when they do crunches, they do leg lifts, they feel in their hip flexors. They don't feel their abs working. So what we need to do is we need to fix your posture, and we need to add a secret tip in here. Okay, fix our posture by pulling your abs in front, giving yourself a little bit of a baby crunch to start the exercise. If you know what posterior pelvic tilt is, it's where you're not sticking your butt out anymore. You're actually tucking it underneath you. That's a really great place to start. Okay, so we get that postural shift here. And then what we want to do is we want to activate either our hamstrings or our inner thigh muscles. Okay, so the inner thighs have like 5 different muscles, and they all have really fun names. Like the gracilis is a good one, the obturator externus, abductor brevis, adductor longus, adductor magnus, and I think there's the sartorius in there somewhere as well. Sartorius. Anyways, if we can activate our hamstrings or our inner thighs, what that does is it tells our hip flexors that they are not allowed to turn on, because you can't have your bicep and your tricep flexed at the same time. Those are antagonistic muscles. You can't have your abs flexed and your low back flexed at the same time. Those are antagonists. They're working against each other. So when we have our hamstrings turn on or our inner thighs turn on by squeezing our heels into the ground or squeezing a ball between our feet on leg lifts, things like that, we can actually tell our body, we have to put this all on our abs right now because our hip flexors are not allowed to do this work. So it's a simple tip using biomechanical principles that's going to help you get a lot more out of those ab workouts. So once again, I'll say antagonistic inhibition means making sure that the opposite muscle is activated. So the opposite of a hip flexor is a hamstring. Okay, if we get the hamstring to activate, then we are not going to get that hip flexor burn and just build nice thick hip flexors, which is of course not what you've always wanted. Okay, so those are my 3 tips, or my 3 myths we busted. Planks suck, abs don't need 20 plus reps, and spot reduction's a lie. The 2 tips I'm giving you right now is build your abs with heavier weight and overload. Make sure you're going up in weight or reps per every week. You're not just doing the same 20 crunches that you saw on a 7-minute abs DVD over and over and over again for 3 years, because that's not going to help you. And the second tip is antagonistic inhibition. Turn the hamstrings on to avoid turning your hip flexors on if that's a problem for you. And the last thing I want to tell you is nutrition is key here, guys. Yes, you need, like people say, oh, abs are made in the kitchen. False. Abs are not made in the kitchen. Abs are built and created and sculpted in the gym. That's where we get the aesthetic that we're looking for. But we really reveal them in the kitchen when we start to shred body fat, okay? And we do that through very specific nutrition principles where we actually can communicate with our body and tell it, where do we want to pull our fat from? At what time of day do we want to start creating more energy for our brain? What time do we need to start creating more for our body? When are we going to start consuming fats? When are we going to start consuming carbs? So if you want to see an actual case study where I took someone who lost 21 pounds in 88 days and we walked through exactly what they did, how they were successful, follow the link below here in the show notes, or if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll have that in the description. But check that out, because it's going to be very imperative that you get the nutrition dialed in if you ever want to see those abs. So I can't go into it on this episode. That'll be a future episode for sure. But make sure that you are dialing in the nutrition, hitting the high quality nutrient dense foods that's going to give you the results that you're looking for. Because other than that, after that, even if you are like the strongest guy in the world, you're lifting a ton, you're just a beast. If you don't have your nutrition, you're never going to have the full 6-pack that you want, okay? And maybe you don't want a 6-pack, but getting down to at least 15% body fat using specific nutrition principles is going to allow you to reveal the 6-pack, the abs that you already have. So I really hope that was helpful for you. If you want any more information, make sure you're in that $1 Million Body group on Facebook. It's awesome. Other than that, check out the link below to see how someone is able to lose 21 pounds in 88 days. It's not complicated. It just takes consistent effort. So hope you guys are having a great day. I'll talk to you super, super soon.